You're watching the wrong screen. Right now, you likely have the evening news turned up, eyes locked on the naval blockades in the Strait of Hormuz, assuming that every looming shortage and every quiet retail price hike is the inevitable byproduct of a Middle Eastern standoff. You believe the global supply chain is buckling because it is under fire. You are being misdirected. The reality of the global market right now operates exactly like a massive mechanical trapdoor, and the lever is not being pulled by insurgents in the desert. If you look at the raw macroeconomic data, consumer demand across the primary Asia to Europe trade lanes has actually softened. The World Container Index for that specific corridor recently dropped by 8%. The system is currently experiencing a surplus of maritime capacity. There is idle steel sitting on the water. And yet, if you look at the transatlantic routes, the exact arteries pumping imported consumer goods into American ports, freight costs violently surged 15% in a single week. This defies fundamental logic until you realize you are watching a highly engineered illusion. The massive global shipping alliances are quietly executing what the maritime industry refers to as blank sailings. They are deliberately canceling scheduled voyages, pulling container ships out of rotation, and artificially choking off the cargo flow to engineer a state of acute scarcity. They are not passive victims of the geopolitical conflict. They are actively weaponizing the public panic to optimize their profit margins. They are pulling the trap door out from under the market to keep the pricing floors artificially high. To comprehend the sheer violent scale of this financial extraction, you only need to look at the current spot market for very large crude carriers navigating these disrupted waters. The daily charter rate for a single VLCC has just shattered the $300,000 mark. Do not let that number float in the academic ether. That $300,000 a day is not being absorbed by multinational energy conglomerates or foreign governments. It is being paid by you. It is acting as a hidden parasitic siphon, bleeding the actual purchasing power of your 401k retirement fund with every tick of the trading clock. And on a purely granular level, it is the exact mathematical reason why that heavy, waterlogged multi-pack of liquid body wash you plan to pick up at Walmart next Tuesday is going to aggressively assault your wallet. You are not paying for the soap ingredients. You are personally financing the daily operational burn rate of a steel leviathan stranded thousands of miles away. You are absorbing the shockwave of a systemic rerouting, and they are relying on your geopolitical distraction, so you do not notice the hands going into your pocket. But the extraction mechanism goes much deeper than just the hull of a cargo ship. What you're actually experiencing at the retail register is a mechanism I call the derivative inflation tax. You assume you're purchasing a product based on its primary utility, cleaning your clothes, washing your hands, or preserving your food. You are not. You're primarily purchasing the plastic container holding that product, and you are subsidizing the sheer gravitational penalty of moving it across an ocean. The petrochemical supply chain, which originates in the exact Middle Eastern corridors currently under immense maritime strain, is the invisible bedrock of modern consumer goods. The base chemical feedstock required to manufacture nearly every plastic bottle, jug, and resealable bag in your home is called Nafta, and the global Nafta market is quietly fracturing. As the strategic shipping routes become hostile, the flow of these critical feedstocks slows to a crawl. Right now, major Asian petrochemical conglomerates are issuing declarations of force majeure, a drastic legal maneuver allowing them to walk away from fulfilling binding supply contracts due to unavoidable raw material shortages. Because of this massive upstream bottleneck, current industry data indicates that 99% of packaging manufacturers across Germany and the United States are abruptly cornered. They are facing violently surging input costs just to acquire the raw plastic resins they need to keep their factory lines running. I want you to sit perfectly still for a second and think about the last heavy, industrial-sized plastic jug of liquid laundry detergent or commercial white vinegar you placed into your shopping cart. Strip away the colorful branding, strip away the corporate marketing promises. What you are actually holding in your hand is roughly 80 to 90% ordinary tap water encased in a naphtha-derived plastic shell. In a normalized, peaceful economic environment, shipping heavy water halfway across the planet is a minor, localized inefficiency. In our current logistical reality, it is a fatal financial vulnerability. This is the brutal physics of the supply chain, operating exactly like hydrodynamic drag on the hull of a ship. In fluid dynamics, a vessel with a massive, heavy surface area generates immense frictional resistance against the water, forcing the engine to burn an exponentially higher volume of fuel just to maintain a baseline cruising speed. The global consumer goods market operates on the exact same physical principle. When diesel fuel surcharges compound month over month, and maritime freight capacity is artificially throttled by those shipping cartels we just discussed, the frictional cost of moving dense, waterlogged, and heavily packaged products skyrockets. The global logistics infrastructure is currently punishing mass and volume with merciless efficiency. The manufacturers of these heavy, low-margin liquids, whether it is bulk liquid soap, household chemical cleaners, or heavy glass-bottled condiments, cannot absorb this hydrodynamic drag. Their profit margins are far too razor-thin to swallow the derivative tax of surging Nafta packaging and skyrocketing container freight rates. So they apply a cold and unemotional mathematical formula and pass the entirety of that frictional penalty directly onto you at the checkout counter. You are paying a premium tax on the dead weight of water and the chemical scarcity of the plastic shell holding it. This physical reality is systematically redefining what constitutes an expensive commodity in the modern economy, because when the sheer cost of physical movement becomes this financially toxic, the entire global transport system begins to ruthlessly discriminate against what gets prioritized. This discrimination process operates exactly like a deep-sea decompression chamber suffering a catastrophic breach. When the oxygen, in this case available cargo space, is violently sucked out of the system, you must ask yourself, who suffocates first? The answer is always the entities with the weakest metabolic efficiency. Right now, global air freight rates have violently surged by 95% over a single 30-day window, driven entirely by compounding war risk premiums and spiking aviation fuel costs. Because the skies have become prohibitively expensive, manufacturers of high-margin, lightweight goods, pharmaceuticals, aerospace components, and premium consumer electronics are scrambling downward, aggressively bidding for space inside maritime shipping containers. They are essentially buying up all the oxygen in the room. This creates a brutal state of asymmetric warfare within the cargo hold itself, and the primary casualties are the cheap, heavy, unglamorous staples that anchor your household pantry. Your bulk baking soda, industrial white vinegar, coarse food-grade curing salt, and heavy glass jars of basic condiments. These items possess profit margins too frail to survive the current freight environment. Why would a shipping cartel dedicate precious container volume to a pallet of $10 bulk salt when a manufacturer will pay a staggering premium to secure that exact same physical space for high-end microprocessors? They will not. When you walk into your local supermarket next month and notice the bottom shelf preservation staples are simply gone, understand that it is not a manufacturing deficit. They were mathematically evicted from the supply chain. We have witnessed this exact Darwinian purge of the logistics network before. Look back to the 8-year closure of the Suez Canal between 1967 and 1975, when naval mines locked down that critical maritime artery, forcing the entire Asiatic and European trade flow to physically divert around the Cape of Good Hope. The sheer geographic penalty birthed the modern era of the massive supertanker, but it also unleashed a ruthless gravity tax on the working class. Bulky, low-value commodities were systematically purged from priority shipping manifests. Entire categories of cheap imported goods vanished from Western retail shelves, or their prices multiplied overnight, simply to justify the real estate they occupied in the hull of a ship. History is not just repeating, it is rhyming with a terrifying algorithmic precision. Yet, as devastating as the derivative tax on packaging and household liquids might be, the most lethal systemic chokehold is not happening in the cleaning aisle. It is happening in the soil. Do not casually skip past this next data point. I need you to pause, silence the noise around you, and sit with this specific reality for a moment, because what I am about to tell you is the absolute unyielding leading indicator for what it will cost to feed your family in exactly 6 months. The Middle Eastern corridors, currently paralyzed by naval standoffs, control roughly 45% of the global export supply of agricultural fertilizers. Since this blockade initiated, the global spot price for urea, the non-negotiable nitrogen-rich bedrock of modern, high-yield agriculture, has spiked by 25%. This single metric completely hollows out the comforting patriotic illusion of American agricultural sovereignty. You might look at the vast acreage of the American Midwest and assume your food supply operates inside a protected domestic bubble. It does not. The American farmer is completely tethered to imported petrochemical derivatives. When global urea costs violently inflate by a quarter, that exact premium is immediately grafted onto the baseline operating expenses of the domestic corn, wheat, and soy belts. This is not some abstract futures contract trading in a void. This is a direct arterial bleed on your localized purchasing power. That 25% fertilizer shock is the mathematical guarantee that the price of the ground beef sitting in your garage freezer, the commercial bread on your kitchen counter, and the poultry you are budgeting for the holidays are currently being aggressively repriced by a geopolitical standoff halfway across the globe. Understanding this impending squeeze is only half the equation. The natural impulse of the uninformed public, when faced with systemic shocks like a 25% fertilizer spike, is to panic hoard. That is the reaction of an amateur driven by emotion. The men who actually survive and insulate their wealth during these inflationary cycles do not hoard. They execute a deliberate mathematical reallocation of working capital. You must view your rapidly depreciating US dollars not as a safety net, but as melting ice. Your immediate strategic objective is to convert that fiat currency into the physical assets possessing the highest potential hydrodynamic drag. And you must do it before the major retail conglomerates update their algorithmic pricing models to reflect the new reality. I am talking about aggressively acquiring structurally dense, zero water weight commodities. Look at traditional bar soap or concentrated dry laundry powder. These items have the water weight physically stripped out of them, making them highly efficient to store, yet they are manufactured using the exact same Middle Eastern petrochemical feedstocks that are currently fracturing. Or consider whole bean coffee. It is a dense, heavily freight-dependent commodity, originating from the African and South American trade corridors that are currently experiencing massive logistical rerouting. By acquiring these specific items right now, at today's artificially suppressed prices, you are essentially shorting the global freight market. You are legally locking in the previous era's transportation costs before the trapdoor fully opens, and the new shipping premiums are passed on to the consumer. But I do not want you to simply take my macroeconomic analysis on faith. I want you to deploy your own localized diagnostic test. Sometime this week, I want you to walk into your local supermarket, go to the aisle holding the heavy, volume-dependent items. Pick up a massive jug of cooking oil, a commercial-sized bottle of white vinegar, or a bulk pump-action bottle of liquid body wash. Look at the exact price tag on the shelf. Then, I want you to come back to this video, go down to the comments section, and record that exact dollar amount alongside the name of your city. That comment will serve as your personal financial tripwire. It is your baseline barometer. Watch what happens to that exact number over the next 90 days as the derivative, tax, the freight cartels, and the brutal friction of the supply chain finally arrive at your local loading dock. The underlying architecture of the global economy is already fracturing, and the price tags in your neighborhood have simply not realized it yet.